Adrian Cross stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, the glittering sprawl of the city stretching endlessly beneath him. At 42, he had built Cross Dynamics into a multi-billion-dollar empire. Innovations in smartphones, artificial intelligence, and software systems used by millions across the globe. His name appeared on magazine covers. His quotes were broadcast in business channels. His influence reached boardrooms across continents. And yet tonight, none of that mattered. On the polished mahogany desk behind him lay a single, unassuming documentone that could unravel everything he had worked for. His late grandmother's will was brutally explicit. Marry and produce an heir within 18 months. Or control of Cross Dynamics passes to your cousin, Ethan. A cousin who, as far as Adrian was concerned, had never worked a single honest day in his life. Of course she would do this, Adrian muttered, running his fingers through his dark hair, still as thick as it had been in his 20s. Even in death, she's pulling the strings. Margaret Cross had been a force of nature, unwilled, fiercely intelligent, and more than a little manipulative when she believed it was for the greater good. She had watched Adrian spend his adult life consumed by work, avoiding anything resembling a real relationship. This ultimatum was her final gambit to force him into what she believed he was missing. The soft chime of the elevator broke the silence, and his assistant, Camille Foster, stepped into the office. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she crossed to his desk, a thick leather-bound folder in her hands. Mr. Cross, here are the profiles you requested, potential candidates for your situation. Adrian's mouth tightened. Put them there, he said, nodding toward the desk. Camille obeyed, though her expression was tinged with discomfort. For the past 3 months, Adrian had endured what felt like the most expensive, elaborate version of speed dating in history. Heiresses, actresses, entrepreneurs, models seek one perfectly groomed, charming, and eager to be seen with one of the most eligible men in the country. But every interaction had felt the same, transactional, calculated. Hello. When they looked at him, they didn't see Adrian. They saw the title, the empire, the bank balance. Cancel tomorrow's lunch with the ambassador's daughter, Adrian said finally, and the dinner with the pharmaceutical heiress. I need a break. Camille hesitated. Are you sure? The board. I said cancel it. When she left, the office grew silent again. Adrian opened the folder of habit, flipping past photograph after photograph of flawless faces. Accomplished women, no doubt. But not one made his pulse quicken. Not one had looked like someone who could see past the empire and into the man. By the time night fell, the Cross Dynamics tower was nearly empty. Adrian had loosened his silk tie, rolled up his sleeves, and buried himself in work. At least in business, he knew the terms of the deal. Everyone was honest about what they wanted: profit, efficiency, results. The unexpected voice, round midnight, a soft, mechanical hum reached his ears lower of a vacuum cleaner somewhere down the hall. The night cleaning crew, usually their presence barely registered in his mind. They came after hours, kept the building spotless, and left before dawn. But tonight, restless and unable to focus, Adrian found himself listening. Most of the voices outside were low, murmured in Spanish. He caught fragments of conversation, talk of children, family troubles, weekend plans, concerns from a world far removed from the cutthroat pace of corporate boardrooms. Then, one voice stood out, clear English, laced with the soft lilt of an accent. Mia, sweetheart, I know you want those art supplies for school, but we'll have to wait until next week when Mama gets paid. I promise, okay? We'll get them then. Adrian's brow furrowed. He moved closer to the office door, curiosity prickling at him. Through the glass panel, he saw here a young woman seated in the reception area, an old cell phone pressed to her ear. Her uniform was the standard gray of the cleaning staff. Her long, dark hair was pulled into a simple ponytail. Even under the harsh fluorescent lighting, she was striking warm brown eyes, a graceful face, and an air of quiet dignity. But what caught Adrian most was the tenderness in her voice when she added, "Tell Grandma Roser I'll be home by 3. And don't forget to brush your teeth." I love you more than all the stars in the sky. For a moment, Adrian couldn't move. When had anyone last spoken to him with such simple and calculated affection? The woman ended her call, sighed softly, and rose to gather her cleaning supplies. She worked with quiet efficiency, each movement purposeful, and as Adrian watched, an idea began to form so unexpected, so unconventional, that he almost pushed it away. Almost. First words. Adrian stepped into the hallway. She looked up instantly, startled, her posture snapping to attention. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize anyone was still here," she said quickly. "I can come back later if you prefer." "No need," Adrian replied. "I often work late." "What's your name?" "Eleanor Rouse, sir," she answered, still gripping her cleaning caddy. "I've been with the building services team for almost 2 years." 2 years? Adrian repeated, letting the name settle in his mind. "I overheard you speaking to your daughter. Mia, was it?" The slightest tension appeared in Elena's posture. "Yes, she's 7. Is there a problem with personal calls? I only take them during my break." "No problem at all," Adrian said, lifting a hand in reassurance. "You sound like a devoted mother." Some of the tension eased from her shoulders. "She's everything to me. I work nights so I can be there during the day, help her with school, take her to class." "And her father?" The question escaped before Adrian could stop it. Eleanor didn't flinch. "Not in the picture. It's just me, Mir, and my mother, who helps when I'm working." Adrian nodded slowly. Here was someone who knew responsibility, someone who worked herself to the bone for the people she loved, and she spoke of it without pity or embellishment. "Elena," he said after a moment, "this might sound strange, but would you consider having coffee with me, somewhere outside of work, where we could actually talk?" She blinked. "Mr. Cross, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I know exactly who you are," he interrupted gently, "and that's why I'm asking." The hesitation. She searched his face, as if expecting to find mockery there. Finding none, she shook her head slightly. "I don't understand. Why would someone like you want to have coffee with someone like me?" Adrian gave a faint smile. "Because in the last 5 minutes, you've been more genuine than anyone I've met in the last 5 months." Her grip on the cleaning caddy tightened. "I need this job. I can't afford complications." "Understood. Whatever you decide, your position here is secure. No strings, no pressure." He reached into his pocket, retrieved a sleek black card, and wrote his personal number on the back. "If you ever want to talk, call me." She took it reluctantly, tucking it into her pocket without looking. "Good night, Mr. Cross." Adrian returned to his office, strangely unsettled. For the first time since his grandmother's will had thrown his life into chaos, he felt something close to hope. A call he didn't expect. The next day passed in a blur of meetings, contract reviews, and phone calls. But every so often, Adrian found himself glancing at his phone. No call, no text. By afternoon, he was telling himself not to care. Then, at precisely 4:17 p.m., his phone rang. An unknown number. He answered instantly. "Mr. Cross." Her voice was cautious but clear. "I've been thinking about your offer. Could we meet somewhere neutral? Somewhere my daughter could come with me. I don't like leaving her unless it's for work." Adrian smiled, warmth blooming unexpectedly in his chest. "Of course. How about the Children's Museum downtown this Saturday?" "That sounds perfect," Ellen replied, and he could hear the relief in her tone. Saturday afternoon arrived gray and cool, a soft drizzle painting the streets with the familiar sheen of the city. Adrian Cross stood outside the Children's Museum of Discovery, hands tucked into the pockets of his dark jeans. He wore a light gray button-down shirt instead of his usual tailored suit, his hair a little less sculpted, his expression unsure. He had closed multi-billion-dollar deals in boardrooms filled with hostile executives. But the idea of meeting Eleanor Rouse in a public place with her 7-year-old daughter made his pulse race in a way that no business negotiation ever had. He didn't know why exactly. Maybe because this was the first time in years he was meeting someone without an agenda in mind. Well, almost without an agenda. At precisely 2 o'clock, she appeared walking toward him from across the plaza, holding the small hand of a little girl who could only be Mir. Eleanor wore dark jeans and a soft cream sweater, her hair loose today, the waves catching hints of gold in the muted light. Her face was makeup-free, yet she looked effortlessly beautiful in a way that no designer gown could manufacture. Mia, in a sunny yellow dress with her hair into playful braids, bounced slightly with each step, clearly excited about the museum. She clutched a small sketchbook under one arm, its edges frayed from use. Introductions. Mr. Cross, Elena said, stopping in front of him. Her tone was polite, almost guarded. This is my daughter, Mir. Adrian crouched slightly so he could meet Mia's gaze at eye level. It's nice to meet you, Mia. Your mom tells me you like art. Mia's big brown eyes brightened. I do. I want to be an artist when I grow up. Or maybe a scientist. Or both. A genuine smile tugged at Adrian's mouth. Excellent choices. Artists and scientists both change the way we see the world. Mia grinned. That's what Grandma Rosa says too. Well, sounds like your grandmother is a very smart woman. Mia giggled and turned toward the museum doors, tugging her mother's hand. Inside the museum, they moved from exhibit to exhibit, and Adrian found himself falling into an easy rhythm he hadn't expected. He lifted Mir so she could reach the periscope in the science wing. He held her sketchbook while she painted at the art station. He answered her endless "how does this work?" questions with patient explanations, genuinely enjoying her curiosity. What surprised him most was how natural it felt, how quickly he forgot about the reason he had wanted to meet them in the first place. Eleanor watched them quietly at first, almost as if she was evaluating him. But as the afternoon wore on, she relaxed. She saw the way Adrian knelt beside Mir to help her assemble a model rocket without taking over, letting her do the important steps herself. She noticed how he really listened to her daughter's ideas. And she noticed something else, too. He didn't look at his phone once. When Mia needed a bathroom break, Elena accompanied her. And on the way back, Mia leaned close and whispered, "Mama, he's nice. He doesn't talk to me like I'm little." Elena's chest tightened. She'd expected to meet a man who was polished, perhaps charming, but also detached. Instead, she was watching someone who seemed genuinely interested in her child. The conversation, after nearly 3 hours of exploring, Mir was happily absorbed in coloring at a corner table in the museum cafe with a new set of markers Adrian had bought her at the gift shop. That gave the adults a rare few minutes of privacy. "Elena," Adrian began, his tone quieter now. "There's something important I need to tell you. Something you probably won't expect." Her protective instincts flared instantly. "Go on." He leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on the small cafe table. "My grandmother's will has a clause. It says that unless I marry and have an heir within 18 months, I lose control of cross dynamics to my cousin. That deadline is less than a year away now." Eleanor blinked. "You're serious?" "Unfortunately, yes. And I've spent the past few months meeting women who are interested in what I have, not who I am." His gaze was steady, but there was something vulnerable beneath it. "Then I met you, Mr. Cross." "Adrian," he corrected gently. "Please." "Adrian," she hesitated over his name. "Where is this going?" He took a breath. "I'd like to propose a marriage arrangement. 1 year, legally binding. In return, you and Mir would have financial security, to secure her education, buy a home, anything you need. After that year, if you chose to leave, you would still have those resources." But he paused. "After spending today with you, I'm hoping it might be more than just an arrangement." Elena's reaction. For a long moment, Elena simply stared at him. Her practical mind calculated what such an offer could mean. No more working nights. No more scraping by opportunities for Mir she'd never dared to imagine. But another part of her bristled. "You're asking me to marry you for money," she said flatly. "I'm offering you security in exchange for helping me protect my company. he clarified, his tone calm but direct. I know it's unconventional, but I also know that when you spoke to your daughter the other night, there was more love in your voice than I've heard from anyone in years. That's rare. Eleanor shook her head slightly. This is insane. People don't do this. Desperate people do, Adrian said softly. And I am desperate, Beth, to save my company and to find someone real in a world full of masks. At that moment, Mia looked up from her coloring. Mama, are you okay? You look funny. I'm fine, baby, Elena said, forcing a smile. Just talking about grown-up things. Mia went back to her drawing without further questions. Adrian's voice was gentle. I don't expect an answer right now. Just think about it. Talk to your family if you want. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. The family discussion. That evening, Elena sat at her mother's small kitchen table, the scent of simmering soup filling the cozy apartment. Rosa Morales listened without interrupting as Elena explained the surreal conversation she'd had at the museum. When Elena finished, her mother leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. So, a billionaire wants to marry you for a year and will make sure you and Mir are financially secure for life? It sounds ridiculous when you put it like that, Eleanor admitted. It sounds like a blessing, Rosa countered. Major, you've been working yourself to the bone for 7 years. When was the last time you bought yourself a new coat? When was the last time you didn't have to worry about rent? Eleanor rubbed her forehead. Mama, it wouldn't be real. It would just be pretending, would it? Rosa asked quietly. The way you talked about how he was with me at today, that didn't sound like pretending. At that moment, Mir appeared in the doorway in her pajamas. Mama, is Adrian going to be my daddy? Elena froze, caught off guard. Sweetheart, it's complicated. Would he be nice to us? Mir asked seriously. Would we still live together? Yes, Eleanor said carefully. We'd live together. And yes, I think he'd be nice. Mia considered this, then nodded. Then I think it would be good. You get sad sometimes when you think I'm not looking. Maybe Adrian could help you not be sad. Her simple words hit Elena harder than any argument could. The decision. 3 days later, Elena found herself in a small coffee shop in her neighborhood, waiting for Adrian. He arrived in a dark sweater and jeans, looking oddly at home among the worn vinyl booths and chipped mugs. I've been thinking about your proposal, Elena began without preamble. If I agreed, and I'm not saying I am, what exactly would this look like? Adrian outlined it in measured detail. You and Mir would move into my home, separate bedrooms unless you decided otherwise. She'd attend the best schools. You'd have financial independence, your own accounts. After a year, if you wanted to leave, you'd have a settlement that would mean you'd never have to work again unless you wanted to. And if there was a child, Elena asked, her cheeks warming. We'd decide together, he said simply. The will requires an heir, but I would never pressure you. She studied him for a long time. Why me, Adrian? Really? Because when you talk about your daughter, your entire face lights up, he said without hesitation. Because you work 3 jobs without complaint. Because in a world where everyone wants something from me, you've asked for nothing. Elena's decision came as quickly as it scared her. 1 year, she said firmly. Full legal marriage, prenuptial agreement protecting both of us. My own lawyer will review everything. Adrian's smile was instant and genuine. Done. As they shook hands across the table, Elena felt something she hadn't in years. Possibility. The following week moved with a speed that made Elena feel as though she'd been swept into a current far stronger than she could control. Her lawyer, an old family friend who had helped her mother once during a landlord dispute, reviewed the prenuptial agreement line by line. It was ironclad, protecting her and Mir while also safeguarding Adrian's company and assets. Every clause was clear. Every promise was in writing. There would be no surprises later. When she signed her name at the bottom, she felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. This was real now. The courthouse wedding. The ceremony itself was nothing like the extravagant affairs she'd seen in movies. There was no lace gown, no orchestra, no rows of glittering guests. Just Elena, Mir, her mother, Adrian, and his attorney, James Whitmore, standing in a quiet corner of the courthouse. Elena wore a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back. Adrian looked impossibly polished in a dark suit, yet he seemed oddly relaxed. When the judge asked them to join hands, Elena felt the warmth of Adrian's palm wrap around hers. His grip was steady, reassuring, and unexpected. "I promise to honor our agreement," he said when it was his turn to speak, his gaze fixed firmly on hers. "And I promise the same," she replied. Meir clapped when the papers were signed, her smile bright enough to light the whole room. Arrival at the Cross estate. 2 days later, a moving truck carried what little Elena and Meir owned into Adrian's world. The Cross estate sat on a rise overlooking the city, a sweeping property with manicured gardens and tall iron gates that swung open at their arrival. The mansion itself was all white stone and glass, modern yet imposing. Eleanor stepped into the marble foyer and immediately fell out of place. Her sneakers squeaked faintly on the polished floor. The ceiling soared high above, and every piece of furniture looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. "This is where you live?" she asked softly. "It's where we live now," Adrian corrected, setting down one of Mia's boxes himself. Mia, meanwhile, was wide-eyed with wonder. She darted from room to room, her excited voice echoing through the halls. "Mommer, there's a pool and a room with a window seat. Can that be mine?" Adrian laughed, the sound genuine. "It's yours if you want it." The staff. By evening, Elena met the household staff: Antonio, the chef, Margaret, the housekeeper, and David, the groundskeeper. All of them were polite, but clearly curious about the new mistress of the house. At dinner, Antonio served a 3-course meal so beautiful Elena felt guilty cutting into it. Mia devoured her portion happily, declaring the soup the best ever. "You don't have to cook," Adrian told Elena when he noticed her tentative glances toward the gleaming kitchen. "Antonio takes care of that." She shook her head. "I'm used to cooking for us. It feels strange to just let someone else do it." "You can use the kitchen anytime you want," he assured her. "This is your home too." Finding their rhythm. The first week was awkward. Elena adjusting to the sheer size of the house, Adrian learning to navigate having a child in his space. But slowly, a rhythm began to form. Adrian started coming home earlier, often joining them for dinner. He asked Mia about her day at Westfield Academy, listened to her chatter about art class, and even helped her with math homework. Eleanor watched from across the table, realizing that the man who had seemed so untouchable in his glass office tower was capable of warmth. One Saturday morning, she found them in the library. Mia perched on Adrian's lap as he taught her the basics of chess. "Every piece moves differently," he explained patiently. "The queen is the most powerful, but don't underestimate the pawns." Mia's brow furrowed in concentration. "Like people," Adrian smiled. "Exactly like people." The cousins' visit. It was late in their 2nd month of marriage when trouble came to the door wearing a smirk. Adrian's cousin, Damien Cross, arrived unannounced, a tall man in an expensive suit and an expression that screamed entitlement. A photographer and a man in a tailored coat, clearly his lawyer, trailed behind him. Well, Damien said as Adrian opened the door. "The happy couple. I've heard interesting rumors about your convenient marriage." Before Adrian could respond, Elena stepped into the doorway, Mia right behind her. She wore jeans and a soft sweater, her hair in a casual braid. "And you must be Damien," she said coolly, "the cousin who thinks he deserves something he's never worked for." Damien's smile faltered. "And you're the cleaning lady who—" "Mama," Mia interrupted loudly. "Is this the cousin who's never had a job?" Elena's lips twitched, and Adrian nearly laughed out loud. Damien's jaw tightened. "Enjoy it while it lasts," he said, before turning on his heel and leaving with his entourage. Aftermath. When the door shut, Adrian pulled Elena and Mia into a spontaneous hug. "Thank you for defending our family," he murmured. The word family hung between them, unspoken, but heavy with meaning. Elena realized she didn't mind hearing it anymore. An unexpected shift. By the end of their 3rd month together, The lines between arrangement and reality had blurred in ways Elena hadn't anticipated. Adrian no longer felt like a stranger. He had become part of her daily life, Simeon, who made her laugh, who listened, who noticed small things, like the way she always added cinnamon to her coffee. One night, after Mir had gone to bed, they sat on the terrace overlooking the city lights. Adrian handed her a glass of wine. "Elena," he said quietly, "I know this started as an agreement, but I want you to know I'm glad it's you. I wouldn't want anyone else in this role." She met his gaze, seeing the sincerity there. "I'm glad it's you too," she admitted. Neither of them said more. But something shifted in the air between them, a quiet understanding that this was no longer just about a will or a company. The winter air outside the Cross estate had a crisp, bracing quality that Adrian secretly loved. In years past, he would step out onto the terrace alone after a long day at the office, drink in hand, watching the cold breath of the season curl against the glass walls. Now, the view was different, not because the skyline had changed, but because there was laughter inside. It was a Saturday evening, and the scent of fresh-baked cinnamon rolls drifted from the kitchen. Elena had insisted on baking with Mir, despite Antonio's good-natured protests that the kitchen was his domain. The two of them wore matching aprons, and their giggles floated down the hall. Adrian stood at the threshold, leaning casually against the frame, just watching. Elena's hair was loose for once, tumbling over her shoulders, and there was a streak of flour across her cheek. Mir, perched on a stool, was earnestly rolling out dough while Eleanor guided her small hands. "You're supposed to be helping, not just staring," Elena teased without turning round. "I am helping," Adrian replied, stepping into the room. "Moral support counts." Mia grinned up at him. "Can you be in charge of the icing?" He accepted the task, though his hands were far more accustomed to penning corporate contracts than spreading frosting. Still, it felt good. The dinner that changed everything. That same week, Adrian received an invitation to the annual Winter Gala hosted by the Whitmore Foundation, a gathering of Seattle's most influential business figures and philanthropists. It was the kind of event where appearances mattered more than the cause itself. Normally, Adrian would attend alone, putting in the required hours before slipping out early. This time, he asked Elena to join him. "I don't have anything to wear to something like that," she said hesitantly when he brought it up over dinner. "Then we'll fix that," he said matter-of-factly, as though buying her a gown was no more complicated than picking up milk at the store. 2 days later, Elena stood in front of a boutique mirror, wearing an emerald green gown that seemed made for her. The fabric hugged her figure before flowing into a soft train, and the deep color made her eyes glow warm brown. When Adrian saw her descend the staircase on the night of the gala, he went utterly still. For a moment, the ever-composed CEO forgot how to speak. "You look breathtaking," he finally managed. She gave a nervous laugh. "It's just a dress." "It's not just the dress," he said quietly. "It's you." Under the spotlight, at the gala, Elena felt the weight of curious eyes. She could practically hear the murmurs. "Woe, is she? Where did she come from?" But Adrian stayed close, his hand warm at the small of her back. Introductions blurred together. But what stuck in Elena's mind was the way Adrian looked at her when she spoke, as though she were the most important person in the room. And when she mentioned Mir during a conversation with a board member, he jumped in with pride, talking about her art lessons and chess skills. By the end of the evening, the whispers no longer bothered her. She was there with Adrian, and that was enough. The quiet moments back at the estate, the house was silent except for the faint hum of the heating system. Mir was asleep, and the city lights shimmered through the terrace windows. Eleanor slipped off her heels and sank into the sofa with a sigh. "I think my face is frozen from smiling so much," Adrian chuckled, loosening his tie. "You were perfect tonight." She rolled her eyes. "I was trying not to trip over that ridiculous hem." He crossed the room and sat beside her. "You have no idea how much easier it was with you there." For the first time at one of these events, I wasn't counting the minutes until I could leave. She glanced at him, catching something unguarded in his expression or softness that wasn't part of their arrangement. Adrian, she began, but stopped, unsure where the sentence was going. Instead of pressing, he simply reached for her hand. You don't have to say anything. Just thank you for tonight. When the lines blur, as weeks passed, the formality between them began to fade. Eleanor no longer felt like a guest in his home. She had her own rhythms, her own favorite corners of the sprawling mansion. Adrian, in turn, had learned to make space for her literally and figuratively. He set aside time each morning to have breakfast with her and Mir. He began coming home early enough to help Mir with homework or join her in the garden while Elena cooked. And sometimes, late at night, Elena would find him in the library, reading something that had nothing to do with business. One evening, after Mir had gone to bed, Elena brought 2 mugs of hot cocoa to the terrace where Adrian was watching the city. They sat together in comfortable silence, the night air cool against their skin. I used to think I didn't belong in a place like this, she admitted. And now, he asked. She hesitated, then smiled faintly. Now I'm not so sure. An unexpected visit. It was early spring when Damien showed up again, this time uninvited and unannounced. He arrived in a sleek black car, wearing the kind of smirk that made Adrian's jaw tighten on sight. I was just in the neighborhood, Damien said, stepping into the foyer without waiting for permission. Thought I'd check on my dear cousin and his lovely wife. Eleanor crossed her arms. If you're looking for a scandal to feed your lawyer, you won't find it here. Damien's gaze flicked to her belly, still flat, but his implication was obvious. No Heir yet. Adrian stepped between them. Leave, Damien, before I throw you out. Damien gave a mocking bow and sauntered away. But the tension lingered long after the door closed. Something more. That night, Elena found Adrian in his office, staring at the city lights with a distant look. Does it bother you what he said? She asked. He shook his head. What bothers me is that I used to think this was only about the company, but lately it's not. She felt her pulse quicken. What is it about now? He turned to her, his gaze steady and unflinching. You and Mia, and the fact that I don't want this to end. Her breath caught, but she didn't look away. Then maybe it doesn't have to. For the first time, the idea of really staying didn't scare her. The first hints came quietly. Elena had been unusually tired, her energy dipping even during the mornings she used to greet with ease. Adrian noticed it first over breakfast, when she barely touched her toast and pushed the plate toward him with a soft laugh. Not hungry? He asked, concern threading his tone. Just a little off today, she replied, brushing it aside. But by the third morning of the same, and with Mir commenting innocently, Mummer, you sleep more than me now, Adrian's worry deepened. A visit to Dr. Hayes. Elena hadn't been to a doctor in years for anything beyond routine checkups. She wasn't used to the luxury of same-day appointments. But Adrian insisted. Dr. Catherine Hayes, a calm, professional woman with kind eyes, listened patiently as Eleanor described her symptoms: fatigue, mild nausea, a strange awareness in her body she couldn't quite explain. After a few gentle questions and a brief examination, Dr. Hayes smiled knowingly. I think we should run a simple test. Elena's brows whereupon. Test for what? The answer came in the form of a small white stick and a 5-minute wait in the clinic's quiet bathroom. She stared at the faint pink lines appearing in the tiny window, her pulse racing as though her body had leapt ahead of her mind. When Dr. Hayes confirmed it, Elena's hands went cold. You're about 6 weeks along, processing the impossible. She sat in the passenger seat of Adrian's car in complete silence on the drive back. The city passed by in blurred streaks of color, her mind somewhere far behind them. Are you all right? Adrian asked finally, his hand brushing hers on the console. Elena swallowed hard. I'm pregnant. The words sounded surreal even to her own ears, as if she were telling someone else's story. For a heartbeat, Adrian said nothing. Then, slowly, a smile broke across his face, wide, genuine, unguarded. We're having a baby. She turned toward him, startled. You're happy about this? Happy? He let out a short, incredulous laugh. Elena, I've been handed many blessings in my life, most of them material, but this is the one I never thought I'd get. Her chest tightened. This wasn't part of the deal. His smile softened. Maybe the best parts of life aren't telling Mir. That evening, Elena sat Mia down at the kitchen table, the warm scent of Chef Antonia's chicken soup filling the air. Mir, sweetheart, we have something to tell you, she began. Adrian joined her, resting his hand lightly on Elena's back. You're going to be a big sister. Mia's eyes went wide. A baby in our house? Elena nodded, bracing for a flood of questions. Instead, Mia squealed, jumped from her chair, and threw her arms round both of them. I'm going to teach them how to draw and play chess and swim. Her innocent enthusiasm washed away some of Elena's lingering fear. Shadows from the past, but not everyone would receive the news so warmly. Adrian knew Damien wouldn't waste a second twisting it into a weapon. And sure enough, 3 days later, a letter arrived from Damien's legal team, requesting verification of the pregnancy for estate documentation purposes. Adrian tossed the letter into the fireplace without reading past the first paragraph. He's desperate, Adrian muttered, watching the flames coil around the edges of the paper. He knows this seals everything. Elena rested her hands protectively over her stomach. I don't care what he says. I just want this baby safe. The shift in the house. From that moment, the atmosphere in the Cross estate changed. Adrian, already attentive, became quietly protective in ways Elena hadn't expected. He had Antonio adjust meals to ensure she was eating nutrient-rich food. He insisted on hiring a driver so she wouldn't have to navigate icy winter streets. Even his work schedule shifted. He was home earlier, leaving his top executives startled at board meetings when he delegated major decisions. One evening, she found him in the nursery, what used to be a rarely used guest room, standing with a folded blueprint in his hands. You're planning already? She asked from the doorway. I was thinking soft sage walls, a window seat, maybe a reading nook, he said, almost shyly. I want them to have a space that feels like it's theirs from the first day. Her throat tightened. This wasn't the man she'd expected to marry out of convenience. This was someone building a family, breaking the last barrier. One snowy night, they sat together by the fireplace, Mir asleep upstairs, the baby's presence now an unspoken bond between them. Eleanor watched the flames dance before finally speaking. Adrian, when we started this, I told myself it was just an arrangement. I needed security for Mir. You needed an heir, he finished for her, voice low. She nodded. But now I'm scared, not of you, but of how much I want this to be real. Adrian turned toward her fully. Elena, from the moment you walked into my life, it stopped being about an arrangement. You and Mir, you're my family. This baby just makes it undeniable. Her pulse hammered as he reached for her hand. So, what if we stop pretending? What if we let it be real? She met his gaze, saw nothing but sincerity, and for the first time, didn't feel the need to protect her heart from him. Part 5 ends here, right at the turning point where they both admit the feelings are real, and the baby becomes the symbol of their future, not just a requirement in a will. 2 weeks after their quiet admission by the fire, the Cross household moved with a new kind of rhythm. Mornings began with Mir clambering into their bedalways with a book in hand while Adrian brewed coffee and Eleanor sipped herbal tea on the balcony. The nursery plan had grown into a project that seemed to bring Adrian almost boyish excitement. Elena had stopped thinking of the baby as part of the arrangement. It was their baby, no hers, and Audrey and Sand. That subtle shift had turned every small detail into something precious. But the peace was never going to last. Deep down, Adrian had known Damien wouldn't go quietly. The first strike, it came in the form of whispers articles in business columns, suggesting Adrian's marriage had been engineered to secure his grandmother's fortune. Anonymous sources hinted at financial incentives for Eleanor. Adrian read the first piece in his office, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The photograph U.S. later shot of Elena holding Mia's hand outside Westfield Academy made his blood boil. When he returned home that night, Elena was already in the living room, the magazine folded neatly on the coffee table. "They're saying I married you for money," she said without preamble. Her voice was steady, but her knuckles were white against the armrest. Adrian sat beside her, covering her hand with his. "You and I know the truth. Mia knows the truth. Let them choke on their lies." "But they don't stop there," Elena whispered. "They're implying Mia is unsafe here, that you only care because of the baby." That cut deeper than anything else. Adrian's gaze turned steely. "Then Damien's made this personal, and that's a mistake." Damien's visit. 3 days later, the storm came to their door, quite literally. Elena had been in the kitchen helping Antonio prepare dinner when the heavy brass knocker sounded. Adrian answered, and the unmistakable voice of Damien drifted through the whole mug, drawling, "Well, cousin, I see domestic life hasn't dulled your reflexes." Elena froze, knife poised over the cutting board. When she stepped into the foyer, Damien's eyes slid over her, lingering just long enough to be insulting. "So, this is the blushing bride," Damien said, his smirk curling. "And here I thought you'd choose someone more accustomed to crystal and couture." "Careful," Adrian warned, his voice low. Damien feigned innocence. "Just checking in, making sure everything here is legitimate. You understand family interests and all. This is our home," Eleanor said evenly, stepping forward. "And you're not welcome." Mia's small voice drifted from the staircase. "Mummer, who's that?" Before Eleanor could answer, Adrian's tone cut like ice. "No one we need to know, sweetheart. Go back upstairs." Damien chuckled, glancing at his watch. "We'll see each other again, cousin. Perhaps in court." When the door finally closed behind him, Adrian turned to Elena, his hand warm at her back. "He's looking for cracks. We won't give him any." Closing ranks. From that day forward, Adrian took no chances. His legal team began compiling records proof of their marriage's legitimacy, timelines, photographs, financial transparency, not for the board or the press, but for the day Damien inevitably tried to drag them into a courtroom. Elena hated the intrusion, but she understood the necessity. Every time a photographer lingered too long outside the gates, Adrian's hand would find hers, his silent way of saying, "I've got you." At night, in the quiet sanctuary of their bedroom, they talked about the future, how to protect Mia from gossip, how to raise the baby without the shadow of Damien's malice hanging over them. An unexpected ally. It was Rosa, Elena's mother, who gave them the first real opening. One evening, over dinner, she set down her fork and said, "Damien thinks you're alone in this fight. He's wrong. There are people who remember your grandmother, Adrian, people who know her intent." Adrian leaned forward. "Go on." Rosa explained that she had once worked as a part-time floral assistant for events at the Cross estate years ago. She'd overheard conversations between Margaret Cross and her trusted lawyer conversans that made it clear the marriage clause wasn't about trapping Adrian, but about ensuring he shared his life with someone genuine. "If it comes to court, I'll testify," Rosa said firmly. Elena's eyes widened. "Mama." "No, Major," Rosa said gently but with steel. "You think I'd let some snake try to tear apart what you've built here? Not a chance." Strength in the everyday. The weeks rolled on, and though Damien's provocations continued, they were met each time with a united front. One Saturday morning, Elena found Adrian in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, flipping pancakes with Mia perched on the counter beside him. She stopped in the doorway, just watching Mia's delighted giggles, Adrian's mock-serious commentary about the art of pancake flipping. He caught her gaze over Mia's head, and something passed between them, an unspoken vow that whatever storms came, these moments were their anchor. The quiet before the courtroom. By the end of the 4th month, it became clear Damien was building toward a legal challenge. Adrian's lawyer, James Mitchell, visited the house one evening with folders stacked high. "Trial by media isn't working for him," James said. "He's going to push for a formal hearing to contest your eligibility under the will." "We'll be ready." Adrian nodded once, his hand resting on Elena's knee. "Let him come." But later, when they were alone, Adrian pulled Elena into the study, his voice quieter. If it ever feels like this is too much, say the word. I'll walk away from the company before I let him hurt you. Her heart clenched. Adrian, you fought for this your whole life. You and the baby are my life now, he said simply. She pressed her forehead to his. Then we fight together. Part 6 closes here, right on the edge of the coming legal showdown, with Adrian and Elena fully united not just in the arrangement, but as a couple bound by love and the shared determination to protect their family. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered not by post, but by a suited courier who refused to leave until Adrian signed for it. Elena was in the conservatory tending to the new rose plants Adrian had bought for her when she heard his footsteps, heavier than usual, crossing the marble floor. He stood in the doorway, an unopened envelope in hand, his expression unreadable. It's official, he said, breaking the seal. Damien has filed a petition to contest my inheritance. Her stomach tightened. What does that mean for us? It means, Adrian said, scanning the document, we'll see him in court, and he's betting everything on proving our marriage is a sham. Eleanor wiped her hands on her gardening apron and stepped closer. Then we prove him wrong. The war room. By that evening, the Cross Mansion's library had been transformed into what James Mitchell, Adrian's lawyer, jokingly called the war room. Files, photographs, legal statuettes, everything was laid out on the massive mahogany table. James walked them through Damien's arguments that the marriage was arranged solely for the purpose of fulfilling the will's requirement, that Elena had received significant financial benefits in exchange for participating, that their relationship was not consistent with a genuine marital partnership. Eleanor couldn't help but laugh at the last point. Not consistent? We've shared a home for months, raised a child together, built a nursery. James held up a hand. We know the truth, but court isn't always about truth, it's about perception. Damien will try to paint you as a gold digger and Adrian as a manipulator. Adrian's jaw flexed. Then we show them the reality. The first day in court, the morning of the hearing, the courtroom buzzed with a low hum of gossip and the clicking of reporters' cameras. Eleanor walked in beside Adrian, wearing a simple navy dress and her grandmother's locket, a quiet statement of her own roots. Damien was already there, lounging in his seat with a smirk that made Elena want to march over and slap it off his face. His lawyer, a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit, whispered in his ear while glancing at Adrian and Eleanor like a predator sizing up prey. When the judge entered, the room fell silent. The opening arguments were exactly as James had predicted. Damien's counsel painting Elena as an opportunist plucked from obscurity to play the role of dutiful wife. They even had enlarged photographs of her in her cleaning uniform, holding Mir's hand outside a bus stop. Elena felt the burn of humiliation creep up her neck, but Adrian's hand found hers under the table, squeezing once. I've got you. The testimonies began. Damien side-paraded a series of witnesses who claimed to know Adrian's dating history, all implying that marriage had never been on his radar until the will forced it. When it was their turn, James called Rosa first. I knew Margaret Cross, Rosa said firmly, her voice carrying clear across the room. She wanted Adrian to find someone genuine, someone who saw the man, not the money. And from the day my daughter met him, I saw how he looked at her. That wasn't business. That was a man seeing home for the first time. The murmurs in the courtroom were instant. Even the judge's expression softened. Next came Westfield Academy's art teacher, who spoke of how Adrian had attended Mia's school events quietly, without fanfare, and how Mia's grades and confidence had blossomed since moving into the Cross household. Elena takes the stand. When James finally called Elena, the weight of the moment pressed hard on her shoulders. She took the oath, sat down, and met the judge's gaze head-on. Mrs. Cross, James began, tell us how you met your husband. She recounted their first encounter, late-night cleaning shift, the overheard phone call to Mir, the coffee invitation she almost refused. And did you marry him for his money? The question was blunt. Eleanor didn't flinch. No, I married him because he asked for my help in a situation that was bigger than both of us. And somewhere along the way, I realized I didn't just want to help him keep his company. I wanted to be his partner in life, even knowing about the will. Yes, she said, her voice steady, because by then, it wasn't about the will. It was about him and our family. Adrian's turn. When Adrian took the stand, Damien's lawyer pounced. Mr. Cross, are you saying there was no financial arrangement? I'm saying, Adrian replied evenly, that providing for my wife and stepdaughter is not a financial arrangement. It's called being a husband and a father. She tried to press him about the prenuptial agreement, about the private school tuition for Mir, about the house. Adrian didn't waver. I gave them a safe home, education, stability, not because of a contract, but because I love them. That's what family does. The final blow. James saved their trump card for last. Your Honor, he said, we submit anti-evidence letters written by Margaret Cross herself, found in her personal desk by the estate executor. They detail her hopes for Adrian's future and specifically her belief that when the right woman came along, he would know. The clause in her will wasn't a trap. It was a nudge. The judge read in silence, then looked up. This court finds these letters admissible. They provide clear context for the clause at the center of this dispute. Damien's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The room felt the shift. Verdict. 2 days later, the judge delivered her decision. The marriage between Adrian Cross and Eleanor Rodriguez Cross is valid and entered into in good faith. The petition to contest the inheritance is denied. Full control of Cross Industries remains with Mr. Cross. The sound of Damien's chair scraping back in frustration was almost as satisfying as the relief flooding through Eleanor. Adrian turned to her in that moment, not caring about the cameras, and kissed her hand. We did it, he whispered. No, Elena corrected softly. We did it. The quiet aftermath. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. Flashbulbs exploded. But Adrian guided Elena and Mir through the chaos with a protective arm. Back in the car, Mia leaned over from the back seat and said, does this mean we're safe now? Adrian met Elena's eyes in the rearview mirror. Yes, sweetheart, we're safe. Elena squeezed his hand. The fight was over. But something far more important had been won. Trust. The day after the verdict, the Cross mansion felt different. The air seemed lighter. The silence warmer. For the first time in months, Adrian woke without the gnaw of tension in his stomach. No looming hearings, no threats from Damien, just the steady rhythm of Elena's breathing beside him and the faint sound of Mia's laughter drifting up from the kitchen. He lay there for a moment, watching Elena sleep. A lock of hair had fallen across her cheek, and he reached out, brushing it back gently. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open. You're staring, she murmured. I'm memorizing, he replied with a small smile. Yesterday felt like the end of a war. I don't ever want to forget what peace looks like. Breakfast in the kitchen. Downstairs, Mir was perched on a stool at the island counter, already halfway through a plate of pancakes made by Rosa, who had decided to stay with them for a week just to keep an eye on things. You two look different, Rosa said knowingly when Adrian and Elena walked in. We're free, Elena replied, pouring herself coffee. Mia grinned. Does that mean we can go to the park today instead of more meetings? Adrian laughed. It means exactly that. A day in the city. By mid-morning, they were walking hand in hand through Greenfield Park. Mia raced ahead toward the duck pond while Adrian and Elena strolled behind. The air was crisp, the leaves turning shades of gold and crimson. You know, Adrian said, I've been thinking about what's next. Next for what? For us. For the company. For everything. He glanced at her. I don't want our lives to go back to me buried in work, and you feeling like a guest in my house. Elena's brows softened. I've never felt like a guest, but maybe it's time to make the house truly ours. What do you have in mind? She hesitated, then smiled. A garden, not just roses, vegetables, herbs, a place Mir can dig in the dirt. I'll call the landscapers tomorrow, Adrian said immediately. Not landscapers, Elena countered. I want it to be ours from the ground up. The garden project. Over the next week, the back lawn transformed into something vibrant and alive. Adrian traded his suits for jeans and work gloves, helping Elena till the soil while Mir enthusiastically planted strawberry seedlings. One afternoon, as they knelt side by side in the dirt, Elena glanced at him. "You're not very good at this," she teased, noting the crooked row he'd planted. "I build companies, not carrot beds," he shot back with a grin. "You're learning," she said, her voice gentler now. "And you're here. That's what matters." Adrian paused, looking at her in the sunlight, hair pulled back, cheeks flushed. "I'm exactly where I want to be, preparing for the baby." The garden wasn't the only thing growing. Elena's pregnancy had entered its second trimester, and the faint swell of her belly was becoming more visible. One evening, after Mir had gone to bed, Adrian led Elena upstairs to a room he'd kept locked for weeks. "I've been working on something," he said, opening the door. Inside, the nursery was nearly crumpled soft cream walls, a hand-painted mural of clouds and stars, a crib that Adrian had assembled himself with some swearing, Elena guessed, and a rocking chair in the corner. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. "Adrian, it's beautiful. I wanted our baby to have a room full of peace," he said, "and I wanted you to know I'm all in. For you, for our children, for us." She turned to him, eyes shining. "You already are." Family dinners. The changes in Adrian's schedule were noticeable to everyone. He came home early, cooked dinner with Eleanor some nights, and insisted on sitting down together at the table with no phones or distractions. Mia loved telling him about her school projects, and Adrian listened as if each story were a matter of national importance. One night, as they cleared the table, Elena leaned in and whispered, "You're becoming a dangerous man." "How so?" he asked, amused. "You're making it impossible not to fall in love with you." A surprise visitor. In late spring, a black town car pulled up outside the mansion. From the window, Adrian saw an older woman step out elegant, silver-haired, wearing a familiar brooch. "That's Margaret's oldest friend," Adrian said, surprised. Clara Bennett. Clara had known the Cross family since before Adrian was born. Over tea in the sitting room, she studied Elena carefully before finally speaking. "Margaret would have liked you," Clara said. She always hoped Adrian would find someone with substance, not just sparkle. She glanced at Mir, who was showing off her latest drawing. "And it seems you've brought him more than that you've given him a family." Eleanor felt warmth spread in her chest. Clara's approval felt like a blessing from the past, one more thread tying her to Adrian's world. The evening confession. That night, as they sat on the terrace watching the city lights, Adrian reached for Elena's hand. "You know what I realized today?" "What's that?" "That my grandmother's will didn't force me into a marriage. It pushed me toward the life I didn't know I wanted." Elena rested her head on his shoulder. "And now," he said, kissing her hair, "I want to make sure you never doubt where you belong. You and Mir are my home, always." A new rhythm. By the end of the month, the garden was thriving, the nursery ready, and their lives had settled into a rhythm that felt natural. On Saturday mornings, Adrian made pancakes while Mir set the table. In the afternoons, Eleanor read in the conservatory, while Adrian tinkered in his home office. Though more often than not, he found reasons to wander in and steal a kiss. There were still board meetings, still responsibilities, but they no longer consumed him. For Adrian, success was no longer measured in quarterly earnings, but in the sound of Mia's laughter and the way Elena's hand found his in the dark. The warm scent of basil and rosemary drifted through the open windows of the Cross mansion. Elena was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables from their flourishing garden, while Mir sat at the island counter, carefully painting a butterfly in her sketchbook. Adrian came in from the garden, sleeves rolled up, dirt still on his hands from replanting the tomato vines. He leaned down to kiss Elena's cheek before washing up. "Smells amazing," he said. "What's for dinner?" "Roasted vegetable pasta," Elena replied with a smile. "And your favorite garlic bread." The scene was ordinary, peaceful, perfect. But in the middle of laughter over Mia's story about a school science project gone wrong, Eleanor suddenly froze. her hand gripping the counter. Elena, Adrian's voice was instantly alert. She exhaled slowly. I think my water just broke. The rush to the hospital. Everything after that happened in a blur. Adrian grabbed the hospital bag they'd packed weeks ago, while Rosa hurried downstairs to watch Mir. You're going to be a big sister by morning, Elena told Mir, kissing her forehead before heading out the door. I'll draw the baby a picture, Mia called after them, her voice full of excitement. In the car, Adrian's hand never left Elena's. We've got this, he said, more to himself than to her, as he navigated through the late evening traffic. At the hospital, nurses whisked Elena into a private maternity suite. Adrian stayed by her side through every contraction, offering iced chips, whispered encouragement, and his unwavering presence. Hours of waiting, labor was longer than either of them expected. The night stretched on, punctuated by beeping monitors and the quiet shuffle of nurses' shoes on tile floors. At one point, Eleanor gripped Adrian's hand so tightly he winced. I can't do this, she whispered, sweat dampening her forehead. Yes, you can, he said firmly, brushing damp strands of hair from her face. You're the strongest woman I know, and I'm right here, always. The vulnerability in his eyes, the fierce devotion in his voice, steadied her. A new cry in the world. Just before dawn, the delivery room was filled with the sound they had both been waiting for, a tiny, powerful cry that seemed to pierce through every fear and every doubt. The nurse placed a swaddled bundle into Elena's arms. It's a boy, she said, smiling. Adrian leaned in, eyes wide, as if the whole world had narrowed to the small face peeking out from the blanket. Hello, Gabriel, Elena whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. Welcome home. Adrian kissed her temple, his own voice unsteady. He's perfect. You're perfect. Mia meets her brother. Later that morning, Rose arrived with Mir, who tiptoed into the room as though entering a sacred place. Is that him? She asked in awe. Elena nodded, motioning her closer. Mir, meet Gabriel. Mia peered down at the baby, her expression a mixture of curiosity and protectiveness. Hi, Gabe, she said softly. I'm your big sister. I'll make sure nobody's mean to you. Adrian swallowed hard at the sight. This family, complete and connected in a way he had once thought impossible. Back at the mansion, when they brought Gabriel home, the house felt different, gainfuller, softer. Mir had decorated the nursery door with a hand-drawn sign. Welcome home, baby Gabe. The first nights were sleepless, a haze of feedings and diaper changes. But Adrian surprised Elena by waking up for every shift, taking turns holding the baby so she could rest. One night, while Gabriel slept in his crib, Adrian and Elena stood in the doorway, watching him. Do you ever think about how far we've come? Eleanor asked quietly. Every day, Adrian said. I think about the man I was before Yao, and how empty all of this felt. And I know I never want to go back. An unexpected letter. 2 weeks after Gabriel's birth, a letter arrived addressed to Adrian in elegant, old-fashioned handwriting. He opened it at the kitchen table, his brow furrowing as he read. What is it? Elena asked. It's from Clara Bennett, he said, glancing up. She says she wants to include Gabriel and Mia in something called the Cross Family Legacy Trust. It's an enormous honor, and it means she's recognized you and the children as the heart of this family now. Eleanor blinked, processing the weight of that. She's giving them her blessing. Adrian reached across the table, taking her hand. It's not just her blessing. It's proof that we've built something real, something worth passing on. A quiet night. That evening, after the children were asleep, Adrian and Elena sat on the terrace wrapped in a shared blanket, the city lights twinkling below. You know, Elena said, resting her head on his shoulder, I used to think security meant money, a roof, a steady job, a safe neighborhood for Mir. But now I know security is you. It's us. It's knowing that no matter what happens, we face it together. Adrian kissed her hair. And love, he said softly. Don't forget love. She smiled. That too. A year after Gabriel's birth, the Cross estate was alive with the sound of laughter and music. Lanterns swayed gently in the evening breeze, their warm glow spilling across the manicured garden where friends, family, and colleagues gathered to celebrate not only the anniversary of Adrian and Elena's vows, but the remarkable journey they had taken together. Mia darted through the crowd, her yellow dress fluttering as she chased soap bubbles with a delighted Gabriel toddling close behind. Rosa sat in a wicker chair, rocking slowly and smiling at the sight of her two grandchildren playing together. Elena moved between the guests with grace, pausing to greet each one warmly. She wore a flowing cream dress that shimmered in the golden light, her hair loose around her shoulders. Adrian couldn't take his eyes off her, still couldn't believe this was his life. Renewing the vows. When the moment came, everyone gathered under the arbor that Adrian had personally rebuilt, winding it with roses from Elena's own garden. The officiant spoke briefly, but Adrian and Elena had chosen to write their own vows this time. Adrian took her hands, his voice steady, thick with emotion. Elena, you walked into my life when I was lost in a world of numbers, deadlines, and deals. You reminded me of what truly matters: love, family, and the courage to be real. You've given me a daughter to love as my own and a son who carries our dreams. You are my home, my partner, and my heart. I promise to spend every day proving worthy of the yes you once gave me. Elena's eyes shimmered with tears as she replied, Adrian, you saw me when I felt invisible. You gave me and me not just safety, but a place to belong. You've shown me that love is more than grand gestures. It's in the small things, the daily choosing of each other. I promise to keep choosing you through every joy and every storm. They sealed their words with a kiss, and the guests erupted in applause. Mir clapped the loudest, while Gabriel squealed happily in Rose's arms. David's presence. In the crowd, Adrian noticed Davidus Cousin standing off to the side. The sight still stirred memories of their earlier confrontations, but today there was no malice in David's eyes. After the ceremony, David approached, holding a small wrapped box. I came to say congratulations, David began, his voice low. I fought you, I doubted you, but it's clear you've built something real here. I was wrong. Adrian accepted the gift and nodded. Thank you, David. That means more than you know. Inside the box was a silver rattle engraved with Gabriel's and a she also symbolic olive branch that Adrian quietly decided to accept. A dance under the stars. As night fell, music floated through the garden. Adrian took Elena's hand and led her to the center of the dance floor. They moved together in easy rhythm, the world beyond the soft circle of light fading away. Remember the first night we met, Adrian murmured. How could I forget? You were a billionaire in a tailored suit, and I was a cleaning lady in a gray uniform, Elena teased. And now you're still a billionaire, she said, smiling up at him. But more importantly, you're my husband, my children's father, and my best friend. Adrian's chest tightened with gratitude. And you're still the most real, most beautiful part of my life, building the future. In the months that followed, Adrian and Elena poured their energy into both family and community. Eleanor expanded her garden into a community project, inviting local children to learn about growing food and flowers. Mir became the assistant gardener, proudly teaching other kids how to plant seeds. Adrian, inspired by Elena's vision, created the Cross Family Foundation, funding scholarships for single parents and after-school programs for underprivileged children. Every family deserves a chance, he told the board, just like I was given one. Gabriel grew quickly, his first words mama and dar echoing through the house and turning even the most ordinary days into something magical. A quiet night at home. One cool autumn evening, after the children had gone to bed, Adrian and Elena sat by the fire in the library. The flames crackled softly, casting a golden glow over the room. You ever think about how it all started? Elena asked. All the time, Adrian replied. I was a man trying to solve a problem with a contract, but you turned that contract into a life. Elena reached over, lacing her fingers with his. We both did, and we keep building it together. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the rain patter softly against the windows, content in the knowledge that their love was no longer bound by circumstance, but by choice. Forever means every day. Years later, their children would hear the story of how their parents met and smile at the unlikely beginning. To them, it wasn't strange. It was proof that love often comes disguised, waiting for the moment when people are brave enough to say yes. For Adrian and Elena, forever wasn't a grand destination. It was in the mornings, when Gabriel climbed into their bed for cuddles. It was in Mia's artwork taped to the fridge. It was in the way Adrian still reached for Elena's hand every time they walked together. And every night, before they fell asleep, they whispered the same words, "I'd still choose you," because that, more than anything, was the heart of their story.